What's up, guys? So in my last video, I did Kirby Star Allies all bosses ranks. Well, not all bad bosses, but 5 of the hardest bosses, going from hard, just hard, to hardest. Now I won't say any of those bosses in their order, since that would be spoilers. I already made that video. So yeah, in that video, I said that no EX bosses would count, meaning that Void, the 3 Make Sisters, Corrupt Times, and all of those bosses won't be in there. But today, I have played every single EX bosses, and I'm gonna rank from 5 of the hardest bosses from hard to hard. So without further ado, let's get into it. Also, before we keep going, make sure to hit the subscribe button over here, hit that notification button, and the like button over here. Also smash it. And without further ado, let's get into it. Number 5, I chose Parallel Krakow. Now, Parallel Krakow has 2 phases. It is actually harder than his previous fight. In his previous fight, he would start as one white puffy cloud and then transform into 2, also known as Twin Kraken. But in this version, they start as 2 Krakens. So now you might be wondering why this is harder. Well, because after the boss fight, instead of it being now Parallel Krakow, and no, it's not Parallel Twin Krakow, it's actually called that in the first fight. Instead of there only being one of them, which there is after that fight, instead of there being just one small one, there is one big one, also known as Parallel Big Krakow, as I can say right here. Even though it's mirrored, you can kind of see the big. Parallel Big Krakow is a really tricky boss for me, and while he's not the hardest, he's actually really difficult, as I would really put him in a challenging tier. He is really challenging, to be honest. Now, he's not the hardest boss, like I said, and this is just the beginning of this list. So you think there is going to be some really difficult ones. Well, only one way to find out in number 4. For number 4, I chose Corrupt Times. Now, previously, Highness was really difficult, as he was number 2. Now, in this version, he is a lot harder. But even though a lot harder, there are some bosses that make Highness look like a child can do it. Wait, I'm a child. Okay, but anyways, Corrupt Highness is actually really difficult. As just like Highness, he does the fire things that I don't know how to say. They're like firewalls. I mean, I'm gonna call them firewalls, but I don't actually know what they are. So anyways, firewalls, basically. If you know the name of them, please comment in the comments down below. Anyways, Corrupt Highness is way harder than Highness himself, as he now throws a lot of his attacks a lot quicker and a lot faster. But what makes Corrupt Highness a little too easy is that I feel like if it was similar to his original section. Now, in his original fight, once you get him down to like a tiny bit of health, like I said before, then he'll have a second phase where he uses the 3 Make Sisters. However, Corrupt Highness doesn't have this. And yes, he does use the 3 Make Sisters, but it doesn't work that way. What happens is instead of him getting to the one tiny bar of health, instead, he actually activates the 3 Make Sisters pretty much halfway. Now, I actually find this easier than if you have to defeat him. So, I mean, I guess Nintendo wanted you to not have too much of a bad time. But it's actually quite easier to defeat him that way, since you have to put up more, since you have to put up less with the second phase and first phase as well. So I just find that a little easier. But even still, Corrupt Highness is really difficult to defeat. Even with the downsides, he would still be number 2 if it weren't for these next three bosses. Three on our list, we have Void. Void is actually harder than Corrupt Highness. You might be wondering why. Well, do you know the first thing that happens when you enter the boss fight? Well, this is what happens. Before you even have the second move, as Kirby, he lasers at you before you can even, he's like, laser time. And then it's really hard to avoid attacks. I mean, his name is Void, okay. Anyways, Void is a really difficult attacks that has a whole lot of them. Starting with lasers, the things that could turn your allies against you, similar to Void Soul. I think they look the exact same. And there's 4 of him when he does this attack when he like shoots all these triangle things at you, instead of there just being 1. And all of the attacks are pretty much upgraded. And it's really difficult to avoid a lot of them, but that's not really why he's so high. And he would be even higher. And the other boss that takes second place was also really hard to decide if I should put Void number 3 or Void number 2. But moving on to the second hardest boss in the entire game. So if you had trouble playing Flamebirch, Francisca, or Zane Partisan one by one, just playing them once. Well, you're going to have a lot of trouble playing all 3 of them at once. The 3 Meg sisters are really difficult. However, it's not really the 3 Meg sisters for actually quite a little bit, because for a while, only 2 of them were on the battlefield. Anyway, the 3 Meg sisters have a really cool intro, which happens after you defeat Titus and Heroes of Another Dimension. And I really like the idea of fighting all 3 of them at once, which brings a really good challenge. And I also really like the intro. After you defeat Corrupt Titus, then Partisan gets over there first, and then when he turns around, he sees Kirby and his little knows it's you. But for whatever reason, Kirby was actually trying to help Titus. Can someone explain why? Like, they're enemies. Kirby plus Highness equals enemies. Anyways, Zane Partisan, Flamebirch, and how do I say her name? Francisca? Yeah, that's how I say it, right? Anyways, Francisca, Flamebirch, and Zane Partisan all eventually do fight you. And I know they're in their EX world as well. And it's a really tricky battle. And one thing is about a quarter of their health. All 3 of them do come onto the battlefield. I think Zane Partisan is on the top, Flavor's on the side, and Francisca is on the right side. Now, what makes all 3 of them coming out so hard is that if you get hit by Flamebirch, you're gonna die if you've taken enough damage. Like, if you get hit by Flamebirch's cannon and you have taken a tiny bit of damage, you're most likely gonna die. And the reason why? Well, is because if you get hit by Flamebirch's super fire cannon, it'll get launched into Zane Partisan's super large cannon. And then you'll get hit by Francisca's soda gun thing, water gun thing. I mean, I think it's a nice gun, but I think it's a water gun at the same time. Not only does it do a lot of damage, but it's really difficult to avoid. And so it's one of the most powerful attacks in the game, if not the most powerful attack in the game. To be honest with you, even though their difficulty may be really difficult, they're not quite the hardest boss, but there's more. After they've used their strong attack, they'll keep comboing you on and on and on and on and on and on. Also, by the way, if you're wondering, no Dream Friends are going to be counted in this video. So that's why Void was so low. Like, if you do have dream friends, then yes, it's insanely difficult because dream friends are like overpowered if they use it against you. Yeah. But Void would probably be number 2 if dream friends didn't count because they're just overpowered, and it takes out a lot of these bosses' challenges, especially if you're using the dream friends. But anyway, back to the top. The 3 big sisters are a really hard boss fight, and I like their intro almost more than the entire fight itself. Now, the fight is annoying and hard, and it is really, really difficult to defeat these 3 big sisters. However, despite their difficulty, they're not quite the hardest boss in Kirby's allies. And yes, this time it's true, since unlike last time, EX bosses are normally harder than all the other ones. Outside of which permanent EX has actually got easier. But anyways, moving on to number 1. And for the hardest boss in Kirby's allies, it's no surprise that the hardest boss is quite obviously the hardest boss in Kirby's allies from the original, not EX. Obviously, Morphinite EX is number 1. Not only does it look so freaking cool with the black colors and the red wings, but he's really, really difficult. If you remember Morphinite, then you know his attacks do a lot of damage, they're hard to avoid, and he can summon gas things. Well, Morphinite EX is very similar to that. However, most of his attacks do about 10 times more damage. Like, seriously. And his gas have also been upgraded, so instead of spawning like 1 big gas, he can now spawn up to like 2 or 3. Anyways, I don't want the downsides, but maybe you'll still be able to survive the big sword in the corner. Even still, Morphinite EX is really, really difficult to defeat. The reason why Morphinite EX is the hardest boss in the entire game is because, in Kirby's allies that is because he has all of Morphinite's attacks, or Morphinite, the hardest non-EX boss in the entire game, make it 10 times harder to avoid and 10 times stronger. So yeah, Morphinite is just that difficult. And that is not even his second phase. Is there a second phase? Well, anyways, he also has shockwaves like Void and Void Soul will turn your enemies against you. And he has an attack, and he will just do so many attacks. And he also has this Ice Final Smash attack, like I said, with Morphinite. It can now do more damage than any other boss in the entire game, outside of the 3 big sisters' super attack. I don't know which one's stronger, you tell me if you find out. Now, this boss is so difficult to defeat. It took me like 9 tries. Like, it took me so long to finally beat this dude. Morphinite took me like 3 or 4, I guess. But this guy is just so difficult. I've never beaten. Well, actually, I have beaten this guy. Morphinite EX is so difficult to defeat. And like I said, I like the black design. To be honest with you, it looks really cool. And also, before we end this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and make sure that Falcon punch the like button. Also, Captain Falcon's from F-Zero. Alright guys, and that is it for Kirby Star Allies, all EX bosses, ranked from hard to hardest. Actually, I'm gonna go now.